Today I'm out in search of unusual and maybe different subjects to photograph. I hope you'll enjoy the video. If you do and you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe before you go. A few years ago, I would probably have described myself as a landscape photographer. But in the last 2, maybe 3 years, I've found myself less and less drawn to what I would describe as traditional landscape photography. Instead, I like to seek out things that are different, things that people wouldn't necessarily consider as obvious subjects to photograph. And also photographing them at times and in conditions that a lot of people would walk away from. Middle of the afternoon on a bright sunny day, for example. I've found that finding subjects and shooting them in these kinds of conditions, I don't only enjoy the challenge, but I enjoy the opportunities that are created from it. Today I am out specifically looking for unusual and different things to photograph and seeing how I can make images from whatever I find. It's still very hot here, even though we're now into September. The temperature hasn't really dropped very much, humidity's still high, and I've been struggling to get out. But the problem with struggling to get out is I get bored with being in. So here I am out and hoping I can cope with the heat. Just come down this little side lane, and on top of a building over here is, well, it's clearly some kind of flue or chimney or vent or something, but it kind of looks like a cartoon robot, or maybe sort of some version of the Tin Man out of The Wizard of Oz. It's all textured and rusty. There's a blue sky behind it, some clouds just starting to drift across. So I'm thinking that we can do a shot with this, probably vertical, filling the frame as much as possible with the shape of that thing, and getting some clouds in the background as well. There's all sort of wires coming off of it, obviously to stabilise it somehow. This is going to be zoomed all the way in. I would have thought. Get it with some clouds behind it. Standing, looks like it's kind of standing on the roof. Kind of feel like it needs to be slightly off to one side a bit because it's kind of pointing in one direction, so it's going to not zoom in quite as far. I've walked down this road more than dozens of times. I've driven down it dozens of times. And quite often out the corner of my eye, I see through this fence here in the field some agricultural stuff. There's some machinery, there's a combine harvester. It looks like there might be something else at the back there that I can't quite make out what it is. At the moment there's also a load of boxes there. Never really felt like photographing it before, but today I thought I might give it a go. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to shoot it telephoto, zoomed a fair way in, and what I will probably do is go black and white. And the reason I'm going to go black and white, first of all, we've got very harsh light, so black and white is probably going to be better anyway, but also some of the boxes and that are by it are bright orange, so in a colour version that bright orange is going to dominate the scene, and I don't want that. So instead, what I will do is photograph it in black and white where the bright orange doesn't stand out. So we're going to go with the 55 to 200. Interestingly, many years ago, many years ago, when I first started work, many years ago, I worked in agricultural engineering. So there's a bit of history for me in this kind of thing as well. There's so much wrong with this image. The stuff on the left of the scene still looked bad, even in black and white. The angle I was shooting to get through the fence put the transition between the background and the sky in a really horrible position. Plus, I made the kind of stupid mistake I haven't made in years, not paying proper attention to the camera settings. Okay, underexposing slightly was deliberate to preserve the highlights, but how did I not notice that the ISO had somehow been dialed all the way up to 6400? Underexposed plus high ISO means noise and lots of it. I was tempted to just scrap the image because it was never going to be that great anyway, but I decided just to see what I could do with 5 minutes of editing using tools that I either don't normally use or at least don't do that much with. Like the generative remove tool in Lightroom to remove those distracting elements. Cropping the image down and then using generative expand in Photoshop to extend the background. And then finally using some of the more aggressive noise reduction settings in Topaz Denoise. I was actually quite surprised at what I was able to do. The image is never going to be great, but at least it's no longer completely useless. There's quite a nice palm tree over there. There's a couple of them along here, but this one is backed by like a big bush. Then there's a little gap, and then there's another bush. I don't know if it's a bush or if it's some kind of reeds or something growing up. And I'm thinking a vertical shot with the palm tree to the right hand side of the frame, and then the bush that's off to one side slightly to the left, making sure that both the palm tree and the bush aren't coming out of the frame on either side or at the top. It's against the blue sky, and I'm not 100% sure whether I'd actually do this as a colour or black and white, because there's actually some orange in the palm tree, sort of where some of the palm fronds are joining on at the top, that might actually look really nice against that blue sky. Straight. And something else that I've walked past loads of times is this old house. I'm pretty sure it's derelict or empty, but it's got coloured peeling paint on it, cracked old blinds. Yeah, there's some unpleasant stuff in there. There's some rubbish in the foreground. There's a TV aerial and some lines and that across the roof. But you know, I can take all of that stuff out if I want to in post and just really concentrate on the house itself. And I kind of feel like I want to fit the whole thing in. So even stepping as far back as I can without bringing these bushes in the foreground into the frame, I can't quite fit the building in all the way. So I'm just going to do just a 2, maybe 3 shot horizontal pano just to fit it in. definitely not something I would normally photograph. I've come round to this building which has obviously been started construction and then it's been stopped. I've just spotted up here there's a spider web and there's a spider in it, quite a large spider in it. I'm not quite sure what type of spider it is. It's unusual for me because I'm not a big fan of spiders. I don't like them. I'm not drastically arachnophobic, but I am a little bit. And this is it's got sort of like yellowy stripes on the legs, and it seems to be keeping its front legs sort of each side together and its back legs together. So I'm going to try and get a shot of it with the telephoto lens zoomed all the way in. The limit on how big I can make this is going to be the focal length on this, or the minimum focusing distance on this camera. So I'm shooting at kind of f8. I could really do with getting that down maybe a bit further. Try and get my exposure time up a little bit more. Might have to go up to ISO 1600 to get a nice fast exposure time. So busy looking at the spider I didn't notice the sleeping cat there. It was quite cute actually. I'll have to get a picture of that as well. Woke it up. Well, hopefully I found a few unusual and different subjects, at least unusual and different for me, and I hope you've enjoyed coming along and like the images that I've managed to get. Thank you very much for watching, and until next week, bye.